Well, the Minnesota Vikings set to make it official like a whistle there and finalize a deal with Rams offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell after the Super Bowl to name him as the next head coach of the franchise there. Our Jason La Canfora confirming that. The 36-year-old has served in his current role as the OC for 2 years out in L.A., previously spent 3 with the Washington Commanders, including 2019 as their OC. Also very familiar with his new quarterback in Kirk Cousins. He was his quarterback coach in that final season for Kirk there in D.C. With O'Connell now taking over in Minnesota, that list is starting to get a little bit shorter down to 4 open slots across the league, with Jaguars, Texans, Titans, and Dolphins still trying to find their HCs moving into the future there before we get to the offseason or the beginning of the preseason and also offseason. All right, time to bring in senior NFL writer Jason La Canfora with more on this. And we were on Jim Harbaugh watch in Minnesota, but O'Connell somehow gets the job. Break down how this all kind of shook out there for the Vikings.
Well, they couldn't come to terms with Harbaugh. There wasn't an agreement in place. There was a second interview, but there were no assurances from either side that it was going to come together. And talking to other candidates, people close to other candidates who've been through this process, they came away with the sense that ultimately what was most likely to happen here was a coupling of a young GM and a young first-time head coach. There's going to be a bit of a rebuild that's going to have to take place of that roster, at least a retooling, and that they were probably going to skew, the Vikings were, toward youth. Now, if you bring in Harbaugh and you do agree to terms with him, he's going to have a different amount of say in personnel. He's going to have a different sort of cachet. He's going to walk into the building with very set ideas about how everything should work, versus Kevin O'Connell, who's going to be much more malleable to this setup that was most likely going to rule the day in the end anyway. So they'll wait for Kevin O'Connell. This can't be official until after the Super Bowl when he's done coaching. There is always the possibility that another team decides to wait as well and they win the day. I don't expect that to happen, but again, you can't formally put language down on paper. You can't sign this contract and file it with the league office until O'Connell's no longer employed by the Rams.
JLC, real quickly, I know it's still fresh out there, but the kind of relationship that he has with Kirk Cousins, if you're Kirk, do you kind of feel good about this possible hiring down the road here and maybe a future in Minnesota?
Well, I don't know about that. He's got 1 year left on his contract. It's big money. He's already set himself up for the third time to have leverage and to be at an inflection point where the team's going to have to go to him to create cap space. And the way to create cap space is usually with cash. And you're doing an extension and you're giving him more upfront money to then spread that cap hit over a number of years. That's how the game's played, and few have played it better than Cousins. So no matter who the coach was, the big cap hit being in the last year of his deal was going to force them to come to the table with him and either work something out with him or trade him somewhere and have him massage the contract as part of that process. So we'll see. I think they're in a bind. I don't think there'd be a huge market for Kirk Cousins at the price point he's already at. The one guy who's liked him the most through all this, who has a team that you would say is certainly competitive, is Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. But if they trade Garoppolo, could they bring in Cousins and still develop Lance? I guess crazier things have happened, but I don't think there's a huge Kirk Cousins market.
Speaking of Jimmy Garoppolo, that was my next question.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.